So I got to see an advanced screening of First Man by Damien Chazelle, and it was a fucking banger.
Is it a banger?
This is my second advanced screening, the first being Bad Times at the El Royale. Unlike Bad Times at the El Royale, I felt like the presentation of this one was done a lot more carefully, and it actually had some decent child actors. Not really much of a connection between these two, but the dad from Netflix's Death Note is in both of them, so there's that.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
It was probably one of the best space movies I had seen in a long time, and if you're more adverse to seeing movies in theater and you like to see a limited amount, I highly recommend this be the movie you see in theaters above all else. This is one of the best theater experiences I have had since Dunkirk. And much like in Dunkirk, the reason why this is so good in theaters is because of the incredible sound design. If you wait to see this movie not in the theater, you're really doing yourself a disservice because the sound design is almost essential in order to get attached to everything. I really don't even know what I would think of this movie if I watched it at home with a worse sound system. The sound is such a factor in getting attached to the situations. I absolutely recommend you go see it in theaters. The Oscars have a habit of giving Best Sound Mixing and Best Sound Designer, Best Sound Awards to the loudest movies. So I have no doubt that First Man will get an Oscar in those categories. The music lends itself very nicely to the action, but there were some great moments where it wasn't being used at all and it was all diegetic. And those were some of my favorite moments in the film. There's a scene involving one of the aircrafts spinning, and there's another scene involving a radio that really stand out to me as like the pinnacle of this movie. You've probably noticed I've been giving the presentation a lot of credit and a lot of the action credit, and I haven't really delved into the story that much. Damien Chazelle, if you don't know, directed La La Land and Whiplash. Highly recommend both those, specifically Whiplash. I think it currently is and probably will be the best movie he ever makes. That isn't to say that La La Land and First Man aren't amazing. They're really good, and I certainly don't think he's showing any signs of slowing down. But I think many people would agree that Whiplash is just like a masterpiece. Both Whiplash and La La Land were more story-focused than First Man is. But First Man has some very crowning achievements in terms of presentation. With this movie, Damien Chazelle almost does entirely on shaky cam, which you have seen him use hints of in the past. But this one is almost entirely shaky cam and very close up to the characters' faces. It really adds to this immersive first-person perspective that you're this close to the action and very close to the tension that these characters are feeling. While we're this close to the characters and the camera is so unsteady, is very emblematic to the emotion the characters are feeling, but also to how the actual mission is. Things are not smooth, things are not progressing according to plan, things are very uncertain. And the camera really lends to that. Not just with the actual mission of going to the moon, but also with Neil's home life. It's very bold for Damien to switch up his style like this so drastically. And it pays off very well. I think it shows incredible awareness of what's best for this story, and also really purposeful intent on Damien's part. I feel as though a lot of space movies today always feel obligated to show off space in this beautiful, grandiose way, with this like huge music, just trying to show how good the effects look and how realistic everything is. But for First Man, a lot of the focus isn't on the actual space, it's on the character's perspective of getting there. Instead of it being portrayed as beautiful, it's incredibly stressful and terrifying. The effects in this film wind up being super impressive without them being too showy. Like, I'm not sure what was CGI and what wasn't. There's so much organic tension built up through all the failures that we've gone through with Neil and the rest of NASA. It also sheds light on the historical context of the mission and how it was a very unpopular thing, which really adds to that level of, oh my god, this really does need to go well. A lot of the best moments in this film are just testing the spacecrafts. There's so much purpose put into the shots. In the opening scene in particular, there are just mounted cameras around and inside of the ship, and there's barely any dialogue, and we just watch the test. And for the opening of the film, it's incredibly unnerving and scary just how shaky everything is, how loud everything is. You just really like, how is he so calm under this pressure? But there are other moments, specifically I'm thinking of with a dial counting downward, that's making a very slow ticking noise, and that gets reincorporated into a scene that's not in space and not in a testing facility, but it's at his home life. I won't say exactly what it is. I think you'll realize it when you see it. It's the mix of the space mission interfering with his real life that is also incredibly well done. The scenes involving him at home and him and his family are building off this idea that he's like being more and more removed from his emotions, and he's getting further away from his family, and he's focusing more on it, and he doesn't talk a lot, so he doesn't really explain why he is acting this way and treating his family like this. The audience also starts to wonder, why is that? Why is he not sharing his feelings? Why is he getting more and more calm as the days approach? Is it just because he wants to be in a relaxed state from the mission, or is there something else? I won't spoil what ends up happening, but I will say that the story has a nice payoff moment. It really does give some new meaning to everything we had seen up until that point. Another problem that I have with some modern day space movies is that the story is really dumb a lot of the times. But here, the story is more minimal, and this story that's kind of like drawn back a little bit to really just focus in on the characters does wonders for the actual event that we're leading up to. It makes it feel much more impactful when we've spent time on these characters and understand how they're feeling, and leading up to the mission, how much they actually have invested in it going right. It's great! Overall, I really, really, really recommend this movie. I think it's an amazing cinematic experience that you really do need the theater to truly appreciate. First Man gets an 8 out of 10.
Is it a banger?